Hello and welcome to this example where I'm going to be demonstrating how we use a concept or a method known as knighting in the Grand Tableau. I'm using my own Cyberpunk Lenormand, for which there is currently a Kickstarter, and I'd encourage you to back the Kickstarter and help us perhaps get the next stretch goal. That'd be really appreciated. Thank you. So in this example, I'm using the same spread that we've used in a previous demonstration, but I've just moved the fox card into a more central position just in order to demonstrate how knighting works. Now, knighting, I don't think is a so-called traditional idea, not really anyway, as far as we looked at so-called traditions in one of the previous videos, but it's something that comes into the Grand Tableau through, I guess, the gaming overlap, in that the Grand Tableau, excuse me, the Grand Tableau is, and the cards themselves are based on the game of Hope and similar sort of race games played with cards over the parlor tables of Germany and across Europe. And knighting, of course, is a move from chess. Knighting in the sense of a knight moves two up, or two down, or two to the left, or two to the right, two one way, and then one position up. So that's two across and one up, or two across and one down, or and so on, two down and one across, and so forth. So that gives the knight a lot of flexibility in the game of chess, and I believe when we transpose that into our Grand Tableau readings, it gives us a way to look at a situation, say, out of the box, sort of sometimes it can be a bit of a surprise as to where knighting can lead us. So I want to give this example, and all I've done is I've moved the fox card, and that's all I've done. The rest of the Grand Tableau stays the same as we were looking at before. So you can see the power and flexibility of this in our example. So here's the Grand Tableau. Here's the Grand Tableau with the man and the woman that we saw in a previous example. Still have their cross words in the house, with the cross in the house below them. And if you see that we've now, all I've done is I think I've moved the fox and the ship card. I've just transposed them to look at the fox, because what I wanted to imagine for this example was how the fox can be seen in a few different ways. And in this example, I want to imagine that we have already discussed the situation at home, the potential move for the couple, and so forth. And now what we're going to take a look at is the fact that the woman also has a home business. For example, she literally works in the house, and that is why the house is so close to her. She does a lot of networking in the garden above her, and she uses social media, Twitter, now X, and so forth, signified by the birds above. And now we can basically do a etch-a-sketchy raise of the whole reading and start to look at it in an entirely new context. If she then says, but what about my home business? What do you see in that? And for this, I'm going to use the fox, not the tower, which is more associated with the man in this reading, as we saw before, but we're going to take a look at the fox, because the fox is a sort of cunning, conniving animal that features in a lot of German folk tales at the time, often in conflict with the bear, who then represents the bureaucracy and the local council, or people who are trying to set rules on the fox's behaviour. And quite often the bear is big and cumbersome, and the fox, Reynard the fox in the stories, outsmarts the bear and gets his own way, even though the bear thinks that he's getting one over on the fox. The fox has actually tricked the bear. So quite often the fox is seen as the within fables and within folklore, and as a symbol, as something that is cunning, conniving, can look after itself. And that's why I've got the fox in the back alley looking at trash that appears to be gold, because the fox can see opportunities where no one else can. And so in a contemporary setting, the fox can relate to running your own business, being an entrepreneur, being a solo gig economy worker, and so forth. It's basically the fox goes out and takes advantage of whatever it finds, and is pretty smart, clever, agile, and flexible. So it represents, say, for example, running a shop online. We can see that the woman works from home in this context now, and that she's been doing that a little while, perhaps in traditional crafts, because we can see that the tree card is below the fox, and the tree represents deep roots, family, shelter, health, and so forth. So she's got good roots in this business, it's well established, and so she's got a clientele. And that's because of her work in the garden with the birds. She likes to get out there, network, and so forth. So she's got a reasonable business, but perhaps this situation at home is forcing her to question how she runs her business. So let's take a look at the fox. And we might have done some reading around the house that it's in, the cards that are around it, and so forth. But perhaps that hasn't answered the question. And now we're going to take a look at knighting just as a final aspect of the reading. So I'm going to jump ahead almost to the end of the reading, where we figure out whether we've missed anything or not in her running her own business. So we are looking at the fox card, and there we can see it. So I've just highlighted where it now is. And now what we're going to do is try looking with knighting 2 across and 1 up, or 2 across the other way and 1 up, or 2 up and 1 across, and so forth. So we're going to take a look at some potential knighting positions. Now, I'm not going to look at all of them because I just want to concentrate on teaching this as a method. So let's take a look at where we can potentially knight. Now, we could knight directly upwards, 1, 2, and across, and get to the birds, or we could go upwards, 1, 2, and across to the ship, and that would lead us in slightly different routes, and that's possible as well. But let's just take a look at 4 positions that we might knight to, so I can show you exactly how we might use this. And it's dead easy. It really, really is a nice, simple way of doing it. You can get the sitter to do this with you, to count 2 across and look at the card and see whether there's a potential route that we haven't considered yet. So here I've shown 4 possible knightings, and I've ignored the birds and the ship. So, and you'll see the reason I've done that in a second, because if you go 2 across and 1 up to the left, that gets us to the clover. If you go 2 across and 1 down, that gets us to the cross. If you go 2 to the right and 1 up, that gets to the mice. And if you go 2 across to the right and 1 down, that gets to the snake. Now just look at those cards. If you're a fox and you're or if you're writing, say, a fable, which is the best way for the fox to go if they've only got, in this example, those 4 locations that we're taking a look at going through knighting? And we don't want to face off with the snake. We know that the cross is to do with suffering and bad stuff. The mice is nibbling away, thievery, all sorts of little niggly type negative things. generally speaking anyway. And so it's almost obvious that we go to the clover. The fox needs to get to that clover. So we say, okay, well, there is the potential for a little bit of improvement, generating a bit more success, a bit of good luck. The luckiest way is to go to the clover. So obviously the person is going to want to know then how to do that. So we're going to totally ignore the mice route, we're going to ignore the snake route, we're going to ignore the cross route, and we've ignored the birds and the ship route just for the sake of showing. And you can see why I only wanted these four, because it really demonstrates how easy it is to see which route to go. Usually. But of course you could explore the snake route, you could explore the mice route, and so forth. And you do that by then knighting from the position that we've landed on. So in this case, we're going to go from the fox, two across and one up to the clover, and then we can go from the clover, two across and one up in any particular way that we might want to try and explore. And this is why it's so good for brainstorming, for coming up with solutions that you might not have thought of, because it provokes a lot of route finding and sorting, like, oh, that's definitely not a good one, that's definitely a really good one, or I'm not sure about what that might mean in this position, so let's explore from there. So it's very exploratory, and that's why I like to involve the sitter with it. And it's one of the great things with Lenormand reading, when you go and explore it like a journey. So let's take a look at where we can get to from the clover then. So we've established, and again, in real time, it's a lot faster than an explanation of it, because you just look at the fox. This is yourself in business, your gig business, your solo business, your online business, or whatever. And you go, right, let's knight from there. Mice, no. Snake, no. Birds, possibly. Ship, possibly. Cross, definitely not. Oh, clover. Let's go there. So it takes half a second to actually map that out and find out which route you're going to go. So now, taking a look at the clover, we've gone from the fox to the clover, so I've left that highlighted. And now from the clover, we can see that we have the messenger, the child, the anchor, the house, and the book that we could go to. And this is where basically I'm going to leave it, because you can actually then explore that a lot further, because now we can see potential options for the home business. The child route might be a suggestion to sell to a younger audience. Now we can see how we're now rereading some of the cards in the context of the new exploration, the new question, the new aspect of the person's life. Again, it's why it's so important to have a really clear idea of the question, the context, or the situation, or the personality that we're dealing with, in order to read the cards within that context, because otherwise we have very little context for the symbol of the child, and this can mean all sorts of possible things. But here we immediately know, because we have the question. So it could be looking at a new market entirely, or it could be looking at a younger market. And I just generally get the sense here, in the case example, it would be a younger market. And guess what you do then, if the person wants to explore what they could do with the younger market? What would they sell? How would they attract that younger market? Is there anything to be cautious of, and so forth? What would we do? We would knight from the child. So we would then go, now you'll notice we can go two across and one down to the mice, or back down two and one across to the lily, or obviously we don't go back to the clover. So that's really the only knighting we can do. So the mice, we don't want to go that route. So we'd probably explore the lily. So you'd have to keep the message very simple for that. It would have to be a very simple proposition, not a complex or a layered product or service for that market. It would have to be something, just a dead simple offering. This is what I'm doing. It's obvious from the picture what I'm selling, and it's a simple price for it, and stick it to that. And we could explore them from the lily and go knighting from the lily and so forth. So if the younger market was the thing that we were exploring, we knight that way. But we could also go across from the clover and explore from the messenger. Now, the messenger is about new things, and usually about something totally new that would not have been apparent. It's usually news from abroad, if you like. So here I might start to explore, well, you need to get your message out to a whole load of different people. So, and perhaps not in your country of origin or your country of business. And then we could explore from the messenger. And the messenger, we've only got one place we can go, which is to the letter, which is mail shots. So I would look at their mail shot process and say you need to target that to a new geographical market, because the messenger often brings traditionally, in the original game and so forth, it's about bringing messages, telegrams from afar, news from afar and so forth. So we would then go and explore a new geographical market for the person, and we could then go from the letter to the garden or the letter to the house and so on. And this would be new ways of literally shaping the mail shot and the content that goes in it and how you send it and so forth. We can now reread the whole Grand Tableau by following that knighting process around and finding the best route from Fox, Clover, Messenger. We now will literally have the Grand Tableau tell us our mail shot strategy in detail. How cool is that? And then from the clover, you could go down to the book as well. So we're now taking a look from the fox to the clover to the book. And here we now have new information is needed, a new course you need to go on, a new course that you need to go on. And what sort of course would it be? Well, we can then knight from the book. Now that might take us to the cross, which we have ignored previously, but here we could actually say, well, it's a course in grief counselling or something like that. We could literally get that precise once we know the situation and the person is has provided the context. Then we can literally read this, and quite often we end up with the sitter reading it far better than we do because they know their situation. And so we then guide them through that process in order to look at exactly what course that they need to go on. And knighting is not exclusive. You can do all three of these, or four of them, or seven of them. You can generate an entire business strategy out of a Grand Tableau. That's pretty straightforward to do, particularly with knighting. And I've done it myself a few years ago, and it was very, very successful. So, and came up with a lot of things I wouldn't have even thought of, even in a sort of brainstorming situation. So we've gone there from the clover to the book. We can also go down to the house and look at the impact of home working, which we've already explored a little bit, I guess, from when we were talking about this reading in the first place, with the man and the woman and their domestic situation. Or we could go from the clover and look at the anchor. Now, the anchor is about sort of staying in place, staying where it's safe. So here, we might not explore that much further because we've already established where the person wants to expand or move on or change from the fox. So the anchor is or you could just stay in place. And this would also go from the clover route, so it would bring you little gains, a little bit of luck and so on. So you're in a great situation, we could say, because even if you stick with what you've got, it's still going to have the same impact as doing something new, and doing something new doesn't have much more risk in it than sticking where you've got. So it's up to you. So it's a nice positive look at the situation. So that's really cool. Okay, so that's what we do from the anchor, and then we could see the impact of staying where you are. And now, interesting enough, that leads, if we knight from that, obviously we can go to the dog, which is people you know, so getting support from friends, trusted business contacts and so forth, people you've worked with before, people you really trust, and just really consolidating that from the anchor position. We could go up to the dog or back to the woman herself, which leads it back to why did she originally set up the business the way she wanted it. Let's stick to that. Let's stick to what is tried, tested, true, and with the dog's case, faithful. And then we could go from the dog and take a look at where we might knight from that. And now in this case, if we knighted them from the dog, so we've gone fox, clover, where we gone fox, clover, anchor, dog, that might actually lead us to the man. Now in this case, that is a male contact or person within the business contacts of the woman, not her partner, because we're now reading it in a totally different context. Or it might be a male audience that she needs to reach out to, and so forth. We're now reading each card in a very different, not very different light, but in a very different context. And again, the power of the Lenormand is it has all of these multiple, almost infinite layers of meaning that we can put on it without changing the cards, without moving the cards, doing another layout, doing another spread, drawing an extra card, an oracle card, or anything else. Everything is there right in front of us the moment we've laid the cards down. The cards stay static. We're the ones who do the moving around. Okay, so again, you can see back to the original where I've just got the ship in front of the woman and the fox was up there. But the reason I drew the fox down to that position was just in order to give more mobility around the reading. But I didn't change any of the other cards, so I just read those quite naturally from that position. So when a card is at the edge of the reading, of course, we've got less opportunity for knighting, but that can lead to a far more direct, full stop type of answer, an ambiguous answer when we get into that sort of position through knighting. So I hope this has given you some great ideas, some inspirations to take a look at a Grand Tableau and try some knighting of your own. If we wanted to look at this woman selling her house, perhaps, or doing something with the house, then we would knight from the house and we could go exploring that way. If we wanted to look at how the man could deal with that big business issue, we would knight from the tower. Or from the man himself, perhaps. If we wanted to look at commitment issues, we would look to knight around from the ring at the far right, which is next to the heart, of course, and so forth. You can have a load of exploration and a load of powerful readings from this, and it is very, very simple because the Lenormand cards are so emblematic rather than layered like the metaphorical makeup of a tarot card. Here we're looking at them as emblems and almost pieces of a game that we can explore, like the game of life. Okay, thank you for your time and attention, and if you're listening to this while the Kickstarter is running, then I would again please ask you to help us out by supporting the Kickstarter so we can get this teaching, get the cards out there, and really empower people with the power of the Lenormand. Thank you very much.